my fellow readers. My name is Greg, and this is Ghost Readers in the Sky. I normally read books that cover the literature and the history of the American West, and then from there, I gallop off into whatever direction I want to. And today, we're galloping in a completely different direction to the realm of fantasy, because this is part of the series, The Books That Made Me. And I wanted to talk about the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, The Unbeliever. These were written by Stephen R Donaldson. The three books in this trilogy were Lord Fowl's Bane, The Illyrth War, and The Power That Preserves, published in 1977, 78, and 79, respectively. I probably read them around 1980 or 81. I know I read the paperback editions, and so if there were hardcover editions, the paperbacks were already out when I read these, so that's my best guess. A young teenager I was. These were books that other people who I knew, friends and classmates, were reading, and I really enjoyed those books. Lord Fowl's Bane introduced Thomas Covenant, a writer who is diagnosed with a really nasty chronic illness. His writing career begins to falter. His wife divorces him. A lot of bad things happen. And then somehow he is magically transported to a completely different place. And this is where, obviously, the fantasy comes in. And Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever, is chosen by certain people to lead a rebellion in this land, and he does not want to do it. He's not interested. It's not part of what he wants to be, and he fights against it, and I really enjoyed that. The land also has these healing powers so that his illness, all the symptoms vanish while he is in the land, and so he is grappling with health issues. He's grappling with his life back home that is not going well at all. And here in the land, he is asked to be a hero. And I really like the way that it all falls together, and he begins to accept the idea that he is and can be a hero. I really liked all three of those books, Lord Fowl's Bane, The Illyrth War, and The Power That Preserves. Then there was a second Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, The Unbeliever. And I started into that series, and there was an additional main character added in the first book of the second Chronicles that it just didn't work for me. And so I did not finish even the first book. I'm sure part of that is because I was a young teenager when I was reading these. I also read them all together, and perhaps I was just done with Stephen R Donaldson with his voice at that point. Maybe I should have spread it out and read other books in between. I don't know. That's just how I did it. And I never went back and finished that. And then I learned, really just a few years ago, that there was a third Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, The Unbeliever. This was if I'm thinking right, it was a tetralogy. So there are quite a few books in this Thomas Covenant series. But boy, that first trilogy really struck me. It introduced me in so many ways to the fantasy genre. I really liked the transition between the world that we live in and know and the fantastical world that Thomas gets transported to. Just a fascinating series to me, and part of the books that made me, part of the books that wanted me to continue reading adventure and fantasy. And even though it had nothing to do with the West, I was not reading Westerns at that time, but I think it was getting set up through that adventure idea and that hero idea. I think it was getting set up to really enjoy Westerns later. Thanks so much for tuning in. This series is going to continue, and I hope you continue to follow along. Until next time, My name is Greg. This is Ghost Readers in the Sky. Keep on reading and rereading. And it's okay if you throw a fantasy or two in amongst your westerns.